This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov gang. And this is Herb London's moment. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about radical Islam. What happened in San Bernardino, what is happening to our country, and the challenges that we now confront. Most people in the United States are really unaware of the issue that we are now having to deal with. Let me be very precise about this. President of Egypt, El-Sisi, made the claim last year at Al-Azhar, which is the theological center of the Sunni religion, that there is violence within this religion. He is a pious Muslim, and he said what we have to do is deal with the violence within our religion. He made it clear and used these words at the very end: we need a revolution from within. That speech received scant attention within the United States. It was not mentioned by President Obama. And it seems to me if we're going to deal with radical Islam, then we should look for allies in the Arab world and in the Muslim world that recognize what has to be accomplished. What has to be accomplished is a counter-terrorist activity. That counter-activity should include a recognition of what we are confronting. It is obvious, and of course has been said many times, that most people in the Islamic world are not terrorists. But it is equally true that there is terrorism within this religion. How we confront it and what we do is important. And the first and most significant feature is defining it correctly. What we are defining is not merely religion, but a political, imperial, religious combination. That combination has to be seen against the backdrop of what is happening in world affairs. What happened in San Bernardino, California, is merely one of the incidents that we will be confronting as a people. It is a civilizational struggle that we are up against. That civilizational struggle involves certain characteristics. Number one is the creation of a caliphate, which means, of course, an Islamic empire. The second is Sharia, which is not merely law, but a way of life, and a totalitarian way of life in which all aspects of one's condition in life are enumerated in the religion itself. And third is jihad, which is the use of violence in order to bring about what is Allah's wish or the creation of the caliphate. Some would say it's a spiritual earning or engendering, but it's more than that. It also includes a kind of violent episode in order to promote one's faith. And so we in the United States have to understand what we are facing, being able to recognize it clearly, and recognize the fact that while we do not want to engage in a war against 1.6 billion Muslims, we also have to recognize the fact that there are certain characteristics within this faith that we must deal with. The second very important feature is that those who are eager to change the globe and change the face of the globe have within them a desire to bring about these changes and a fanatical belief that leads to savagery and barbarism. We've seen elements of this across the globe. We've seen it in Paris. We've seen it in San Bernardino. We saw it in 9/11. But what we have to understand is not only what this savagery and barbarism is all about, because they know what they want, but what is it that we want? How do we preserve our civilization? And how do we make sure that the lives that we've been able to prepare our children for, which include the rule of law and individual rights and the free market, how is that preserved? And if we don't know what we want, if we are not sure about what we can defend, it is very difficult to fight this war against radical Islam. And one of the conditions that I think Americans have to embrace is an educational system that once again brings to the public's attention what it is the United States is all about and what Western civilization is all about. Our civilization was created on a set of precepts. Those precepts are essential for people to not only understand, but to engage in this war, this continuing war against the radical sentiments that exist within Islam. And so San Bernardino, to some degree, is an example of what we as a people are going to have to deal with. The two radicals who represented the killers in San Bernardino were two people who, in many respects, were supposedly radicalized. But the radicalization occurs in large part because we no longer demand assimilation from those people who live in the United States. We don't demand it from Native Americans, and we do not demand it from those who are entering our shores. It's important for people to not only understand what the United States is all about, but to embrace our customs, our tradition, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. If America is to succeed, if Western civilization is to succeed, then we have to understand what it is we fight for, not only what we fight against. And so while I have suggested there is a fanaticism associated with this radical form of Islam, it's also true that we in the United States have an obligation to understand the romance that is part of our past. Winston Churchill, during his engagement in the Sudan in the beginning of the 20th century, made the point that if you are looking at the extremism of Islam, what you find, and he used the word Mohammedanism, within Mohammedanism is a radicalization. It is a kind of rabid dog, to use his words, a kind of hydrophobia, where in fact the intent or fanaticism is so great that in fact there is nothing that will stop it. Well, there is something that will stop it, and that is the realization that we have something to defend. Understanding what it is we are fighting for is as important as understanding what we are fighting against. And World War II was perfectly clear. We understood the nature of the totalitarian threat. And we said, we as an American people have to do everything in our power to oppose it. Well, this is a new totalitarian threat. Somewhat different, of course, but somewhat similar as well. In large part because just as Hitler and Stalin represented ideologies that were in some respects non-religious, it is also true that they represented a deep-seated religious sentiment of its own. And that sentiment was, of course, the opposition to the West, opposition to our traditions. So it's important for our educational system to once again open the door to what makes the United States unique. I live near the Statue of Liberty, and every day I look at that statue and I say, here is a beacon of hope. The Statue of Liberty represents something unique. People came to our shores in large part because it represented a certain kind of liberty. That liberty, that light that we shine all over the globe, is something that people want to emulate. Now, there are many in the world who do not understand it. In fact, think that Sharia or the totalitarian way of life is appropriate. But for those who do not, for those who want to feel the joy, the extraordinary liberation that occurs with liberty as we have enjoyed it in the United States, we also have to understand that liberty has to be defended. And as I've suggested, one of the main responsibilities that we have in dealing with this war is understanding what we stand for. So there are counter-terrorist activities that are critical, very, very important, including the supposition that we must engage in checking on all of those who are coming into the United States and checking on the radicalization of those who are already here. But at the same time, we have another obligation, and that is providing with the young people in America with a background and understanding of what makes this country unique. And if we lose that, then of course we lose this war, a war that I think is going to be the critical element for the next at least 100 years. We're fighting a long war. It's not a short war. If ISIS is defeated, as I believe it will be, there is still going to be another radical group. So then the question is, what is it we are opposing? And what we are opposing is, of course, radicalization. What we are opposing is, of course, the extraordinary elements within a religion that, to some degree, stand behind what we have found in San Bernardino and elsewhere. And so our goal today, it strikes me, is Americans have to come to some sort of understanding about what counterterrorism means. And as I've suggested, it does not only mean standing for something, standing against something, which is very obvious, and that is the killers and the savagery and the barbarism that we've seen around the world, but also standing for something. And that something is, of course, the unique qualities that we are privileged to enjoy in the United States. And so as someone who cares very much about our future and about our children, it seems to me that we are engaged in a war that involves Americans coming to a realization of what it is that we stand for as a people. And with that thought in mind, it strikes me that this is not merely an American position, but a civilizational position. And as long as we in the West can stand by our traditions, I think that there is great strength and great dynamism and great innovation. But if we do not understand it, and we find ourselves perplexed or engaged in relativist thinking, then it seems to me we may be lost. And so that is the great contest in the future, the great contest that we face as a people at the moment. And in this regard, I'm absolutely persuaded that we will be successful. But again, I have my reservations. And those reservations come about in large part because I see what is happening at our colleges and universities, where in fact we are facing a different kind of crisis. It's a crisis where people do not appreciate the very basic freedoms that we are privileged to enjoy. When they do not understand it, then we are lost. And there are so many in the United States who obviously find themselves in this position in what is supposedly called higher education. And in fact, what appears to be not higher education, but lower education, a lower education that does not take into account the characteristics that we want to transmit from one generation to another. So with that thought in mind, it seems to me that we as Americans are facing this challenge, a challenge that I think will be around America and around the Western world for at least the next 100 years. Can we stand by our traditions? Remains to be seen. We've seen in Paris that people appear to be united. But united to do what? To stand for what? And again, that union, that understanding is what is critical in thinking about our future. So with this in mind, it strikes me that we as an American people stand by something that is very important for the future of the globe. And it is very much built into the warp and woof of what it means to be an American. If we lose that, then we lose everything. And so counterterrorism is more than simply a couple of words that mean stand against those who want to radicalize the United States and use the caliphate and Sharia and, of course, jihad to change America. What we want to see is an America that can stand for something that, of course, goes to the very essence of our traditions. That, it strikes me, is the key to our future. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you understand the purpose of this message. I would like to say good night and tell all of our viewers that they should go to jamieglazov.com, support the show, and subscribe to the Glazov Gang's YouTube channel. It's important to have messages of this kind delivered. If you are interested, of course, in the words that I've expressed and interested in pursuing this matter further, the londonCenter.org is open to you. Please use it. We would like to hear from you. I would like to understand your message as well. President Obama does not have a philosophy or theory, or for that matter, a strategy for dealing with ISIS. We do. So please come to our website, take advantage of it, and enjoy what the London Center has to offer.